Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to NoDQ video here on Memorial Day weekend. We are now just 1 week away until WWE Extreme Rules, yet another WWE pay-per-view. But as usual, NoDQ.com will have live coverage. I will be doing play-by-play. You can also comment along with me during the pay-per-view in the discuss comments section at the bottom of the page. Also, if you enjoyed today's video, please share it with a friend. Anybody you know who watches wrestling, have them check out this video. Like I've said many times before, word of mouth can really go a long way. With that being said, let's get down to your questions today. First one comes from one of my favorites, obviously. Aaron Rift Rules. Hey Aaron, do you think Braun Strowman's injury will have an impact on his main event push, or will it make him more impactful when he returns? The fact is, Roman Reigns took him out and Braun Strowman cowered away. I think it's going to take a lot for Strowman to really regain the momentum he lost. Now, I think if he comes back and he's dominant, he will be okay. I think WWE will continue to give him the monster push that they were giving him before. I do not see anything happening with that. I think he will get the big push. The company will still be behind him. The question is, will the fans take him as seriously as they did before? I think the problem will be if Strowman gets hurt again. Because if a guy starts becoming injury prone, that can lead to Vince losing confidence in that person and feeling that that person is not worth investing the money in. So that is the issue, I think, with Strowman. I think one injury is okay. Guys get hurt. It happens. But if Strowman develops a pattern of getting hurt, that could affect his career long-term in WWE. And booking is really important. Him being portrayed as a monster is what is getting him over. And without the booking, he's in a lot of trouble. The booking is what helps him gain the credibility as a performer. So without the company machine behind him, he's going to be in a lot of trouble. He's going to be like Kozlov after the feud with Triple H once he became a comedy figure. And Strowman will go back to possibly doing something like one of Adam Rose's bunnies or something like that. Hopefully for his sake he can come back and continue to make a big impact and not get hurt. And this was only a temporary roadblock before coming back and being able to get in there with Brock Lesnar and get back in there with Roman Reigns and be a major force in WWE for years to come. This one comes from Deplorable Hamp. Do you think that it is a good time to turn Kevin Owens face? Mahal is the anti-American and Kevin Owens is the face of America, and they can feud. The whole idea with Kevin Owens right now is that it's sarcasm. He's sarcastically the face of America because he's better than what the Americans have right now in his eyes. He feels he's what's right for America. So it's the cocky, sarcastic heel doing that shtick. Now, I do see Kevin Owens becoming a babyface someday. Will it happen anytime soon? I'm not sure. I think that it depends on how many heels you have. I mean, SmackDown is still pretty short on heels. And yes, Jinder Mahal does fill some of the void in terms of there being top heels. But I think you still need some upper mid-card heels in WWE. And Kevin Owens does a tremendous job. I mean, once The Miz left, there was a huge void. The Miz really carried the SmackDown brand as the top heel for several months. And I think that AJ Styles, once he went face, that hurt the brand as well in terms of having top heels. Right now, I would not turn Kevin Owens. I think it's too soon, but when it does happen, I think it will work. I think the fans will get behind Kevin Owens. They're already behind the guy. They already cheer him half the time when he comes out, and the only time they really boo him is when he's in there against a fan favorite like an AJ Styles or a Chris Jericho, or you have a really strong storyline like the one with Jericho where it worked so well, the story was told well, and it created a scenario where people actually booed Owens because he was an effective bad guy. This one comes from B Hill. Do you think that Randy Orton is maybe boring because he does the same moves every match, hangman DDT, back-to-back backbreaker, and a limb stomp, and so forth. That's just typical of the main event WWE star. They have their signature moves. John Cena has his own series of moves that he does every match. Dean Ambrose does now. It's a thing that WWE does with the top baby faces, where they develop these familiar moves that the fans can look forward to in every match. The signature moves when the babyface makes his big comeback. And yeah, those are Orton's trademark moves. To me, that's not really what makes him boring or stale. I think it's the storytelling. I said this in a recent video. I think that the writing of that Bray Wyatt storyline damaged Randy Orton's reputation in WWE, and it's not Orton's fault in my opinion. I think the writing has really hurt him. I think people are giving him a bad rep, saying that he's lazy and he's not putting in the effort and he's bland. I think Orton, when he's motivated, when he's given a good storyline, I think he's one of the best in the business. And, you know, I've gotten a lot of different questions about Orton and the whole Rene Dupree thing. I think I have a question here. I'll get to that in a few minutes. You know, Randy Orton, I think, earned his spot in WWE. But again, I'll talk more about that when I get to that question. And here's the question now from Beast Slayer. Once again, Beast, I have to censor your username until you change it. This is a PG video after all. Thoughts on Rene Dupree blasting Randy Orton, and how right is he? I think Rene Dupree comes off as bitter. I think that it's fairly typical for a guy that never really got a big break in WWE to complain about how things were during his run. And maybe Dupree was pushed too young. Maybe he'll get another shot in WWE at some point. He's only in his early 30s. I mean, he got that push in WWE when he was only 19, 20 years old. So perhaps we will see him back in WWE, but I think he even mentioned this on his post that he was possibly burning bridges, you know, criticizing Randy Orton. I'm not sure if this will shut any doors for him to come back into WWE. That remains to be seen. But I do feel it comes off as bitter. Like I said, Randy Orton is a guy that, yes, he's the son of a guy who had a fairly successful wrestling career, who was able to help Randy get his foot in the door, but it's a double-edged sword. When you're the son, you're the second-generation superstar, or in Orton's case, a third-generation superstar, there's a lot of pressure, and The Rock was the first third-generation superstar, so when Orton came in, yeah, people see dollar signs in him because of the story that he's a third-generation star, but there's that extra pressure to succeed. And I think Orton really was under a microscope and everybody expecting him to be like The Rock. And that's almost an impossible task, to become as great as The Rock. But Orton came into his own. He turned into a really good performer, and he connected with people. He made an impression on a lot of people, and he's been one of the top stars, one of the most reliable stars in WWE for well over a decade now. And I think that that is because Orton is a very strong performer. And I think to say it's for any other reason is ridiculous. I think Orton is a great performer, and he deserves the spot he's been in WWE. And some might, again, criticize him for maybe not working as hard, criticizing the indie wrestlers for doing too many flips and the dives and all that stuff. But sometimes, you know, there is a saying, you work smarter, not harder. And I think in Orton's case, he's a smart worker. And sometimes less is more. So there's a solid, valid argument looking at it both ways. Yes, wrestling can be any number of things. It can be psychology, it can be high spots. But it is, at the end of the day, guys getting in there and pretending to beat each other up. You sum it up that way, that's what wrestling is. It's two guys in there doing a simulated fight. And the key is to entertain the people however you can. Whatever your strength is. If you're good at wrestling psychology, you do that. If you're good at the high spots, you do that. If you can fall off Hell in the Cell, you do that. If you can get on the mic and trash talk, you do that. Whatever it takes to entertain the people in the realm of this universe where people are getting in the ring and having these simulated wrestling matches. This one comes from Andrew. What are your thoughts on the bashing indie wrestlers, the bashing that indie wrestlers are getting from WWE guys? I find it a little interesting. I know that Ryback has been criticizing indie wrestlers, which is quite the interesting statement, and my phone is acting up here. Because not Randy Orton, Ryback is technically an independent wrestler, and he's calling out the independent wrestlers. Whatever. But, you know, Randy Orton and Baron Corbin responded to a guy who insulted him. I'm a little surprised. I'm a little surprised that Baron Corbin would acknowledge somebody on a small scale, you know. He's taken the bait. You know, I feel like that wrestler trolled Baron Corbin and got a response. Corbin took the bait. So if I'm a WWE star, I would not get involved in Twitter arguments with indie wrestlers. It just doesn't make you look good, and you're giving that guy publicity. So why even bother? I would just ignore their existence and let them do what they're doing. If they make it to WWE, so be it. But Corbin comes off a little bit insecure, I think, when he responds to that guy. You know, I think the guy made a comment that Corbin's balding and that sort of thing. And Corbin seemed to take personal offense to that. And I think that that was probably not the right thing to do in terms of making yourself look good. You know, it's making Corbin, like I said, come off as somebody who's insecure about his spot in the company. And I'm not sure I want to give that. I'm not sure I want to give that impression to people. That's just how I feel personally. This next one comes from The Dark One. Will we see Zach Gowen or someone else with one leg again in WWE with them being in this era? That remains to be seen. That's one of those questions where there's really no way to know. It could happen at any time. It could happen tomorrow. It might never happen. At the time, I remember back in 2003 TNA, I believe it was Zach Gowen. They had him on a TNA show, and WWE decided to sign Gowen for the novelty. Although the funny story is that apparently WWE signed somebody else, and they ended up signing the wrong guy instead of Zach Gowen. They did bring in Gowen, and they did that angle with Hulk Hogan and Vince McMahon, but it was a novelty. It only lasted for about 6 months, and then they let him go. So I'm not sure if WWE will ever bring in another one-legged wrestler unless they felt there was a really good opportunity for some positive headlines. You know, WWE's a company always looking for good PR. I know that wrestler Chris Molines was in TNA for a while recently. You never know, maybe WWE will sign him if they can get some publicity out of it. Who knows? Again, it's really hard to say if they'll do it. You know, I think if they do bring in somebody like that again, it'll be for strategic purposes to generate some headlines, not out of the goodness of their hearts. This one comes from Brohawk. Do you think Loki, aka Cavallo, should return to WWE and would succeed in this version of NXT? Honestly, I think that it's not going to make a difference one way or another. They could bring him in. Maybe he would make a little bit of a difference, but he's in TNA and he's not really doing much. He had a little bit of momentum back in, what was it, 2010 when they had him in NXT, and then they cut him. And now I think that there's not a whole lot of momentum for him. Even though he's in TNA, it's not making any kind of real difference. So I suppose he could be an entertaining addition to the Cruiserweight division, but they got enough guys right now. They got younger guys. They got new guys that are fresh faces. So why do they need Loki? They really don't. And TNA can do more with him since he actually had somewhat of a decent career in TNA. With WWE, he really did not do much. They did not give him the opportunity to really succeed in WWE, even though people were starting to catch on with him. I remember he did that rap promo in NXT, and a lot of people liked it, and then WWE never followed up on it, and he got cut. So I think it's unlikely they bring him back. Never say never, but my gut feeling is they will not bring him back. This one comes from Michael. Hey Aaron, when we did have managers, who would you say had the best? NWA WCW or WWF WWE and why? Answer in video if possible. Thanks. I'd have to say WWE because they eventually got every major manager. They got all the top managers from each territory back in the mid-'80s. You know, they got Jimmy Hart from Mid-South. They got Bobby Heenan from the AWA. They had a tremendous roster of managers. You know, they had 4 or 5 different guys. And, you know, 1985, they also had their own guys. Fred Blassie, Captain Lou Albano. You know, WWE had the best roster of managers, like I said. And then eventually they would get Jim Cornette in '93. Eventually, just about every major manager, anybody who did anything, was in WWE. So I'd have to say WWE for that one. This one comes from Cruz. Has there ever been a moment where you felt like wrestling completely let you down? Oh man, well, the obvious one is Jinder Mahal, but I told you guys I would cut back on the Jinder Mahal ranting. You can check out the other videos for that. You know, the #1 moment for me would have to be the Steve Austin heel turn. I've talked about this before. I was very disappointed with that, very frustrated, and the Invasion. 2001 was one of those really bizarre years for me where one week I was loving WWE, the next week I was hating it. I really hated the Austin heel turn, and then they started to get things cooking with the Invasion storyline, and I was invested again. I was looking forward to it. And then what did they do? They completely screwed everything up with Buff Bagwell and Booker T, and that show was a complete debacle, and I was frustrated. And then the next week, they brought in ECW and did the Alliance, and all of a sudden it was cool again. They turned Austin face, or at least teased it, and I thought, this is moving in the right direction. And then what did they do? They turn Austin heel. And then the whole thing just went downhill from there. And by Survivor Series, I was pretty much fed up. I mean, that was the closest I ever came to just shutting down the website and just stopping. For a brief period, I actually did shut it down for about a month, and then I just had the forums open, and then I reopened the entire site. But yeah, I was very frustrated with the WWE product in 2001. So that would be the year that I was just frustrated and fed up with everything. You know, I felt that Invasion had so much potential, and they just managed to screw the whole thing up. That is something that could have gone on for years. That could have been the biggest thing in wrestling, and they just blew right through it in 6 months. 6 months and it was over. No more WCW, no more ECW, it was just WWE. That was the end of it, you know. Somebody with a great creative mind could have stretched that out to years and made it really entertaining. We could have had inter-promotional pay-per-views. We could have had 2 competing shows, you know, what they eventually did with Raw and SmackDown, but it could have been WWE on one side and WCW on the other. Good creative minds could have rebuilt that WCW brand. I don't care what anybody says. You know, some people say, well, the WCW brand was so dead, there was no way WWE could revive it. I call BS on that. I think that they could have fixed it. But, you know, it is what it is, and, you know, we can all look back and say, this should have been done, that should have been done, you know. I just feel that they made a lot of mistakes, and it very much failed to live up to its potential. That'll do it for NoDQ video. Sorry to end it on somewhat of a downer with the Invasion question. Not an invasion question, but more a question about being disappointed in wrestling. But on a positive note, NoDQ.com has the very latest and all the news heading into Extreme Rules. We got polls up looking for your predictions regarding Extreme Rules. You can leave a comment on YouTube, but I just wanted to note, even though the videos are back on YouTube, I will be replying to more people on the site. So if you're really looking for a response, you want to send me a comment or question, go to NoDQ.com and go to the page for this video, NoDQ video, and leave a comment. I'll respond to as many people as possible. And of course, you can keep the questions coming in on Twitter. Use the hashtag #RoadToNoDQ1000. If you've never had a question answered on video before, use the hashtag PAIV1, and I will make sure to get to that on a future video. So with that being said, I will see you guys next time. No DQ video will be back this week, and also predictions for Extreme Rules. Stay tuned for that, and I will see you guys next time.